Hey everybody, Electric Bagel here, and today Human is going to teach you to paint this and this. For these walls, I'm using a 1/2-inch XPS foam insulation that you can get at any local hardware store such as Home Depot, Lowe's, and Menards. I have two walls, one painted on live stream on Twitch and the other painted here. So you may notice I start with a large wall, but I end up painting the smaller wall for this video. I added pictures of both here. Using my T-square, I'm measuring 1-inch high blocks and carving with a hook and pick set I purchased for just a few bucks at a hardware store. I'm making my initial carve with a sharp hook and light pressure, then I'm going back in with the blunt side to deepen and widen the line. I left the protective plastic on the XPS foam to help protect against tear out as I make these lines with a sharp hook. As an added bonus, the plastic made the hook chatter a little bit, which added an additional texture on the block lines that I really like. I'm now making the vertical lines. My T-square is 2 inches wide, so I'm using that against the edge of the foam and marking every other horizontal line to connect it. I then move my T-square over to the marks I just made and connect the opposite horizontal lines. This produces 4-inch blocks. Now you may notice that I'm using the back of the tool for this, as I don't really want that jagged edge, and the tool is approximately 1 inch long, so it was actually really easy just to press it in rather than drag. I made a mistake here and accidentally connected the same lines as I previously did, so that produced a 2-inch block. I decided to break the pattern slightly by placing my next lines at half of the 2-inch blocks, so it looks like a 3-inch stacked between 2-inch blocks. After painting you can't really tell, but if anybody asks, I'll just say it's part of the story and the wall was repaired after a lab explosion or something. Before you start painting, remember to take the plastic protective sheet off. Now I took the blunt end of the tool and went back over all of the lines just to smooth them a little more. And you don't really have to do that, but I thought it looked better. You can see the lines on the left have been widened slightly as opposed to the lines on the right. Don't worry too much if you go off track here. I slipped out of the groove, but if you connect it back to the mortar line, it'll just look like a crack block. To add texture, I just loosely balled up some aluminum foil and rolled it around on the surface with medium pressure. You can really do this however you want. I've seen people use rocks, roll it around, bang it on the foam, carve out chunks with a pick. It's really up to you how much wear you want on those blocks. To prime my foam, I'm using gesso. Now this is normally used to increase adhesion of paint to a canvas, but I found a million uses for it, including cover up the pink so that it really doesn't show through my gray. It's also great for priming plastic that paint won't normally stick to. A foam brush is a perfect applicator for this because they're cheap, they're 4 inches wide, and won't leave any out of place textures. Try to be as thin as possible, otherwise you'll lose some of that great texture you work so hard for with the foil. It doesn't take very long for the gesso to dry, just make sure it isn't tacky when you touch it. I used a neutral gray for my base coat and made sure I got it on every single line so none of the pink was showing. In the bigger wall, I went back in and shaded every single line with a darker shade of gray, but I wouldn't really recommend that. Using a single solid shade turned out far more realistic. I did 2 thin coats here and then went back in with a number 5 brush to get every single line to ensure no white or pink was coming through. You want to give this 30 minutes to cure a little before the next part. Next up is an ink wash. I use a cheap black paint I picked up on sale for $2 and water it down until it's more like murky water than paint. I'm mixing this in a palette tray, but I would recommend doing this in a cup or a bowl rather than a tray. This stuff really can make a mess. I'm using a disposable glue brush, again because it's cheap and I don't care if I damage it. The purpose of this layer is to let it run into all the cracks and crevices. It'll add a bit of a grimy look to everything it touches, kind of like a stain. This piece is an indoor concrete block wall, so I don't want to go crazy with weathering, but it does take place during a time when coal furnaces were the norm. So what I want to represent is soot clinging onto the wall and in the mortar lines. The wear should really look like it got dirty and was scrubbed over and over. This technique also works really great for sidewalks and exterior walls. To apply the ink wash, brush it on liberally, especially into the cracks. Then use a paper towel or rag to dab it off. You'll see the effect it's making and adjust your technique to get your desired results. The main thing is just don't be afraid to make a mistake. Dirt doesn't make mistakes. Over time, you may see a pattern of your towel start appearing on your piece. Just keep dabbing and it'll go away. This happens because your towel may be too loaded with ink. You might pick up some of the gray exposing the white under it, but that's okay. I just don't dab as much of the ink off, and it's just an especially dirty spot. And there you have it. This project took so long I got a 5 o'clock shadow. Thanks for watching.